It means a lot. Appreciate it. First of all, I'm amazed at the crowd. This isn't the first event I've been to, but this may be the largest of all, and I really appreciate you all coming out tonight. And I want to say special thanks to Dan from Potawatomi County, Levi over there somewhere, from Riley, and then Mary Reed I did not see from Wabunsee County. I don't think she could be here tonight, but Mary Reed Spencer I've known for years and years and years, and it's a pleasure to work with her. So somebody took my first sheet, but that's okay. Who did that? There's a saboteur. Yeah. What I'd like to do before I really get started into it is just tell you a little bit about myself. For those of you from Fort Riley, is that better? Yeah. Okay, all right. This is one of those microphones you have to put right up to your face. So, done. Anyway, I was actually raised in a military family, an Army family, as a child, and so as a child I lived all over the world. I lived in Asia, I lived in Europe, lived all across the United States, from West Coast to East Coast, and in the Midwest. And I loved it. It was very exciting to be able to travel that much, to meet so many interesting people, and to really learn about the world. But when I got older, got married, and started to have my own family, I really felt this urgency to put down some permanent roots. And so my husband and I were living in Denver at the time, and we thought long and hard. I mean, Denver's not a bad place to live, but we decided instead that we would move to Kansas, because Kansas really had everything that we thought important to have. It has, as you all know, great schools. They were greater then, we'll make them great again. And it had good job opportunities. Again, great job opportunities then, we'll make that happen again. And then that sense of community that I really desperately wanted. So we moved to Kansas 32 years ago. We first lived in Salina and then moved over to Topeka. Well, when I was living in Salina, it's messing up his video.
No one could see your face, I'm sorry.
That's not a bad thing necessarily. So anyway, so when I was living in Salina, I was very fortunate to become the first executive director for the Kansas Recreation and Park Association. So I was representing all the public park and rec agencies across the state. And for the 18 years that I did that, I was able to travel all over Kansas. So I've been in just about every small town, large town, urban, rural, west, and east. And by doing that, I really got to know Kansas and Kansans. And I grew to love my adopted state and its people. So 18 years of that, and then in 2004, I ran for the Senate. And I've been there now for the 14 years, and as Dan said, I serve what they call the Powerful Ways and Means Committee, which is the Budget Committee. And then I'm also the ranking Democrat on Public Health and Welfare, and I'm also the ranking Democrat on the Budget Subcommittee for Higher Education. So through my work in the Senate, I have fought for those 14 years to make sure that we have the same opportunities that were available to me and my young family at the time, available to all Kansas kids and all Kansas families. So I have focused heavily on education, haven't been always successful, but we're getting back. And I've really focused on economic development and making sure that we have jobs that are fulfilling and will attract our students to stay when they graduate, and also others to come. So, and then because thriving communities and sense of community was so important to me, I've also focused heavily on that in the time that I've been in the Senate. So we've had a rough 7 years, and let me tell you just a few things that happened just the past month or so. Sam Brownback, who is now part of Kansas history, might not be the brightest part of our history, but But you know what he did, though, is he left behind a legacy. But unfortunately, it was a legacy of denial, destruction, and discrimination. And he left it in the hands of Jeff Collier, who is a self-described Brownback loyalist and who has vowed to carry out the very same ill-advised policies that Governor Brownback carried out. Then we have Chris Kobach. And I don't need to tell any of you that he has made it a career to disenfranchise voters, not only in the state of Kansas, but he's taken that show on the road and gone all over the country trying to do that. And then you might have noticed a few weeks ago, he demonstrated for everybody to see his ineptness by leaking personal information about state employees, including mine, and his own. So if we review the totality of the Brownback-Collier administration, here's what we find. Here's what he left, and Collier is carrying through with. And most of you have been living through this for the past 7 years, so it won't come as any surprise that we have higher property taxes. If you cut income taxes that way, your property taxes are going to go up. We have higher sales tax. In fact, I don't know if people recognize that we have the highest sales tax on food in the entire nation. You know, if you combine our local and our municipal taxes, it's the highest tax on food in the nation. We have cut our schools so drastically that many of them have either reduced the number of hours they're teaching or cut the number of days that they're teaching, so our kids are getting less. We have not expanded Medicaid, so we have 150,000 Kansans who are without access to preventive health care. And we have rural hospitals that have either closed, like the one in Independence, or on the verge of closing. And we have left $2.5 billion, and that number grows every day, back in Washington, D.C. to be distributed to other states so that they can take care of their people and their economies. We have a record number of children in our child welfare system. More foster kids now than we have ever had before. We have gone up to about 7,300 children who are in our foster care system. That is a direct result of the tax experiment that was done and the ideology that was brought into our state. We've amassed record state debt. Can you imagine the most conservative governor we've ever had has amassed the greatest state debt ever in this time that he was there? And we have depleted any and all reserve funds. We are running on empty and living really paycheck to paycheck in certain ways now. And as you are all aware, particularly the younger ones in here, and maybe the ones who work at K-State, we have much higher tuition rates, which are again a direct result of the reduced resources that we provided to our campuses because of the tax gap. Fortunately, we do have some things to celebrate. You know, in 2016, we got a wave of new legislators in. If you remember in 2012, Brownback went after our moderate Republicans in particular and swept them all out, which is why he was able to do so many wild and crazy things. Well, in 2016, there was a reversal in that, and we brought into the legislature a number of new moderate Republicans and a slew of Democrats in the House and in the Senate. So they had a mandate to really repeal that Brownback-Collier experiment, and they did so. So after 9 devastating budget cuts, 3 state credit downgrades, and the dismantling of our most important infrastructures, lawmakers did come together and we have charted a new path forward. But we are not there yet. We made incredible progress, but we've got a lot longer to go. So both Jeff Collier and Chris Kobach, they're the ones we're assuming are going to come out of the Republican primary, it looks that way, want to take us back to what we had. Collier, as I said, has been Brownback's loyal number 2 for 7 years. and is the architect of the disastrous Can Care program, which has really hurt our elderly, our disabled, and our poor. Chris Kobach has already made it clear, he is on record as saying, we will go back to the Brownback tax experiment. Hard to admit, or hard to even imagine why he would say something like that. And he will continue to disenfranchise voters. So it's clear that those guys are more interested in their own personal ideological agendas than they are in anything that's good for Kansans. So we'll continue, we must continue our bipartisan work in the legislature. That is why we're on the road to some recovery. By repealing that tax experiment, we can make sure that all Kansans pay their fair share and that we can then fund our shared priorities. So why am I running for governor? Well, I really just couldn't sit back and either let Chris Kobach become our governor or Jeff Collier remain our governor. We really need a governor who is battle-tested. You know, I've been in the trenches for the last 7 years, and I have been pushing back hard against the policies that have weakened our once stellar educational system, that have weakened our most vulnerable, left them completely without a safety net. And we need a governor who needs no on-the-job training. You know, I've been there, been doing that. I've been a leader on the budget issues. I know how to get us back on sound fiscal footing. And we need a governor who can work hand in glove with the legislature. You know, it's team effort in Topeka. You can't work alone and get anything done. So we need somebody who can work with them and particularly adequately fund our schools. You know, we're faced the school finance issue right now. We've got to come together. We've got to get that worked out, and we need a cooperation of a governor. And then also for all of you, we also need to restore funding to our Kansas universities so we make sure that our kids from pre-K through postgraduate are given the best education and taught by the best and most experienced teachers. We need a governor who will fight for those who cannot fight for themselves. When I'm governor, I will make our child welfare system a model for other states. And I'll also work to ensure that services to our elderly and our disabled are available in the community so that they can stay home instead of having to go into an institution. We need a governor who believes that good government is open government, that public officials are in office to serve the people's needs, not their own personal needs, nor the needs of their donors. The people of Kansas need a governor they can trust in and believe in. And we need a governor who will create a healthy and safe work environment that values and rewards our public servants who labor daily and labor hard to provide for the needs of Kansans. And we need a governor who understands that it takes money to make money. I will make investments in those things we know create jobs, like higher education and roads. And I'll work with the private sector to encourage innovation and spur new business development. We need a governor who thinks about Kansas, but also thinks about Kansas in the future, and will focus on strategies to deal with problems that we know are on the horizon. Our water shortage in western and central Kansas is one of those. We have a water plan, we just don't fund it. We need to change that. So we also need a governor who thinks it's immoral to saddle the next generation and the generations to come with debt. And that debt that's caused by obviously reckless fiscal policies. And we need a governor who sees the legislature as a partner in the process of governing the state. And over the last 14 years, I've built a reputation as a leader willing and able to go across the aisle and form relationships with my colleagues. In fact, everything I've accomplished in the Senate to date is really dependent upon the kinds of relationships that I have built across the aisle with my moderate Republican friends. Finally, as a practical matter, we need a governor, or maybe more particularly a candidate for governor, who can attract the vote of women. Women tend often to determine the outcome of elections because they vote in greater numbers than men. It's a fact, and we have to deal with that. So what we need is a candidate who has consistently voted for the issues that women consider most important. So I want to be your governor. I think I'm uniquely qualified at this point in the state history to do the job. You know, I have the experience, I have the knowledge, I have the skill set, I have the temperament, and I have the relationships to get right to work for you and all other Kansans. But I cannot do that alone. I need your help. You know, I need you to sign up to volunteer on this campaign. I need you to donate. I need you to talk to your friends and your family and your colleagues. And most importantly, I need your vote in August and then again in November. I thank you again for all being here, for Potawatomi Dems, Wabunsee County Dems, and Raleigh County Dems for organizing this. And I'm glad to take questions if there are any. Okay, Sydney will call my name.
I think she was first. I'm Mel Mueller from Riley County, and my concern, I think that many of us have right now, the issue of guns. And I'd like to know what the position on guns, how you stand on that, and also what, if any, is your association with the NRA?
Okay.
Can you repeat the question, too?
Yeah, the question is about guns. What is my position on guns, and what is my relationship with the NRA? I have always supported the Second Amendment rights, and I will continue to do that. But I also recognize that we need, when I first supported a bill, was on concealed carry, but the conversation back then was very, very different. It really was about concealed carry, and it was also about the right to hunt. That's the kind of things that people were talking about. Since then, the conversation has changed dramatically. And now we are really talking about the safety of our children in their classrooms, and we're talking about assault weapons. So it was 2 years ago, I voted for a bill, or an amendment to a bill, that would have banned campus carry. It didn't pass, but hopefully we'll be able to push that through at a later date. Last year, I voted for a bill that banned guns in public hospitals, in our community mental health centers, and in our public adult care homes. This year, I'm looking forward to the opportunity to vote for a bill that will take guns out of the hands of domestic abusers, and also that will allow law enforcement to temporarily remove guns from those who are known to be a danger to themselves or others, like the Parkland shooter. And then when I'm governor, my plan is to actually convene people from the law enforcement world, the education world, and parents and others with relevant insight, to convene them so that we can set a strategy for implementing a comprehensive gun safety program in the state of Kansas. I will also lobby our federal delegation to lift the ban on the Centers for Disease Control so that they can do research on gun safety. Because whatever decisions we make, it would be nice if they were data-driven. And so it would be nice if we could collect some data, and we need to have our congressional delegation push hard to allow the CDC to do that very necessary research. Oh, and the NRA. Okay, so I've run 4 times, and I think once they officially endorsed me, but trust me, they will never do that again. Our relationship is over.
Okay, anybody next? Go ahead.
Jim Swim, Marshall County. What what's your position on industrial grade hemp production within the ag community and actual medicinal marijuana use or recreational use as far as state cannabis?
Okay,
Can you repeat the question?
yeah, okay, where am I on hemp and marijuana, both medical marijuana and recreational? Did I get that right?
Industrial grade hemp.
Industrial grade hemp. Actually, we just had a bill last week, which I voted for, to allow for industrial grade hemp. I mean, I don't know why it took us this long to get there. I think that it's partly a result of the 2016 elections because we have more common sense folks in the legislature now. For years, we couldn't get that through the legislature. We had a bill last year that came oh so close to allowing for the use of cannabinoid oils, particularly for children who have serious epilepsy, Dravet syndrome, for instance, for any of you who know what that is. We couldn't get it passed. We got it close. So, this is Kansas. We're going to have to go step by step. We're not going to jump into, recreational marijuana, on every corner like it sort of is in Denver. That won't happen here, So what I will do is continue what I've been doing, which is to take every opportunity step by step to enact reasonable marijuana laws in the state of Kansas, particularly interested in the medical.
Michael Littlefather, we met some years ago, and I still can't remember where it was, but we have.
Maybe I'll
we've
think
been in
of
the
it.
same room at least.
Okay.
I'm interested in knowing about your sense of the state's some of the most restrictive laws regarding the choice of whether to continue pregnancy. What is your notion about that right to, and the effort to help reduce the number of unwanted pregnancies nationally? Well,
I have voted consistently pro-choice. Absolutely no doubt about it. I really consider it a women's rights issue, that it should be a woman's right to control her reproductive system. I'm not, nobody is pro-abortion, so. And I really dislike the idea that the other side has sort of co-opted pro-life because I evidently really am, even after they're born. So there's that. We have, Jeff Collier actually is trying to get an amendment passed that would constitutionally ban abortion in the state of Kansas. Then you asked me about reducing the number of abortions. I have
the number of unwanted pregnancies.
Unwanted pregnancies, okay. Well, first, you reduce the number of unwanted pregnancies, you'll reduce abortions. There's just no two ways about it. And I have been the one who consistently, through the budget process, has ensured that for every nickel we were going to spend on crisis pregnancy centers, which are primarily based in Wichita area, but where they really work with women to discourage abortion and see them through. I have ensured that whatever they get, that we put into pregnancy prevention programs for teenagers. So I have been on that for a long time. I have, again, never understood why people don't get that if we were to promote birth control and pregnancy prevention, we would decrease so significantly the number of abortions that occur in the state. So if that's your goal, you ought to be pushing on the contraception side. In fact, there is a bill that I'm hoping comes out again. There's a Republican from Johnson County, retired doctor, Barbara Bollier, who has been pushing for legalization distribution of the, not legalization, but distribution and making sure insurance companies cover of the long-acting contraceptive, which would make a whole lot of sense. So That's where I am.
Hi, I'm Dory Lambert from Ryder County. Could you speak to the issue of the privatization of prisons in Kansas and also to the need for prison reform?
One of my favorite topics. I have, and if we want to talk about privatization of Osawatomie and Marnett, I'm glad to go there too. I have really pushed hard to prevent, the construction of a prison that would be constructed by a private company, technically run by the state, but and actually we just passed legislation that would prevent them from privatizing that prison without legislative approval. But I pushed against it primarily because, when you're looking at the correction system or the mental health system, you're talking about just that, systems that have continuums of care or punishment. And so as governor, what I plan to do is to convene, again, experts in the field and have them develop, 10-year strategic plans for filling in the gaps in our continuum of care in both corrections and in mental health. Because we really need to be front-loading on the prevention side, and then, but also investing in the other levels that we know at some point we'll need. So I would much prefer that we do things like set up regional psychiatric facilities so that when people are in crisis, they don't have to get sent to Osawatomie or get sent to jail because there's no room in Osawatomie. I think it would make a whole lot more sense to have those systems in different geographic areas throughout the state so that, one, people have access, two, their families have access, because, particularly at discharge time, it's all dependent, the viability of a discharge back into a community is so dependent upon family. And so I want those resources closer to home.
Back here. Go ahead.
All right, so my name's Samantha Rose. I'm a local trans activist in Manhattan, Kansas. We've been moving and shaking a little bit. My question to you is, what are you going to do for LGBT youth and people in the LGBT community, but specifically for trans people? Right now, the situation for legislatively, which is kind of ignored, which is partially preferable to being specifically negatively focused on. Right, yeah. But on the other hand, that means that it allows insurancers and health people in the health field to not give us any kind of services. So what's our stance on that? What are some things that you would do to improve life for the LGBT community in Kansas and make it so that we're not trying to do it?
Okay, the gentleman just asked me what I will do for the LGBT community in Kansas, essentially. The first thing that I will do.
She's a woman.
Oh, I do apologize, but thank you. So that was awkward. So anyway, the first thing I will do will be to reinstate the executive order that prohibited discrimination against LGBT within the state system. I think Kathleen Sebelius issued that executive order, and Sam Brownback took it away. That will go back right away. And then, I don't know the issue so much about the insurance stuff. I clearly believe in no discrimination against anyone in any place, in any circumstance. So, if we have issues like that in here, then I'll work closely with the insurance commissioner to make sure that they are regulating our companies in a way that they're not allowed to discriminate. And can I just say one more thing on that? I know there have been a lot of problems in the schools. and, you know, issues of separate bathrooms and all that kind of stuff. You know, I think that the fact that that even gets discussed is a direct result of the culture created by the leader. And so as governor, you know, I will have a culture of inclusion, and I will ensure that all the people working for me have that, share that, culture of inclusion, and I'll work very hard with all of our entities, our school districts and whatever else to make sure that that's how we're doing, that all Kansans matter.
I'd like to shift the discussion a little bit. I've heard your colleagues who are running for office, and they pretty much miserably failed at this question. My question has to do with 20 and 30-year-olds. 20 and 30-year-olds, and in some cases 40-year-olds and 50-year-olds, are straddled with ungodly debt from going to universities. They're not able to afford homes. They're going to live for a prolonged period of time in rented facilities. All of this is affecting towns like Manhattan, where those people like myself who own our home are a minority. So I would like you to talk, what is your vision for addressing young people in Kansas, young professionals? They're fleeing our state in huge numbers. They're not wanting to stay here because it isn't inclusive. There isn't the economic vitality that there once was. I mean, I earn half today what I earned in 2004, you know. So we have to look at their needs, and we have to be able to do something as a state to make sure they stay in our state.
I totally agree, and actually, you know, as I said when I was talking before, you know, we came here because those things were available. You know, I mean, we had a nice life in Denver, but we really felt Kansas had more to offer, and so we came. I really want to restore those same qualities, those same opportunities for all Kansans, and particularly our children. I think the thing I'm probably best known for in the Senate, aside from budget, is my real focus on early childhood education and investing in that so that our kids can succeed as they grow up. But then the other thing that I'm known for is my real work at promoting things that will create economic development and create jobs in the state. I, for instance, would not have abolished the Kansas Bioscience Authority. You know, I would have invested more in that because what it was doing, it took Kansas from not anywhere on the radar to number 5 in the country in terms of development in the biosciences. It was a remarkable program. He abolished it because they needed the money to pay the bills because of the tax cut. So, you know, I mean, you have MBAF only because of that Kansas Bioscience Authority. That is how Kansas was able to attract a huge project that lots of other places wanted, but it was the Bioscience Authority. So I would reinvest in those kinds of things that will create the jobs of the future, you know, and the kinds of jobs that young people are looking for. And then I'll go back to the culture. You know, I think a lot of people leave Kansas, and I know a lot of people don't come back because of we've been made the laughing stock of the nation in many ways. And so, before people would say, oh, Kansas, but it was not in a degrading way. It was just they didn't know anything. Now they know. And what they know, we don't want it to be like that. So my plan really is to address the issue of education so that we're raising kids who can be productive citizens, then, you know, building our economy through wise investments so that there are good jobs, meaningful jobs, and the kind of jobs that will attract young people or keep our young people here. And then I will work very hard on making Kansas proud again.
Senator Kelly, Daily Bean, as governor, would you champion a prevailing wage law to ensure that public spending on infrastructure will go into the pockets of those working on the projects and not the owners of the companies that get the contracts for highway projects?
You know, the Democrats have pushed for prevailing wage for years. Obviously not successfully yet. We have a little more work to do with our moderate Republicans to get them to understand the importance of it. I think last year we had a bill in regarding the prevailing wage that would have only impacted Wyandotte County. We stripped the ability of local communities to make those decisions about prevailing wage. We need to reinstate those. And so, yes, I will work on reinstating the ability of local communities to determine if prevailing wage is what works for them.
Yes.
Neil Manhattan. My question is about the environment and where you stand on fracking. The opinion that we should do it in capacity. How do you feel about it?
Well, I don't think we really understood when we just sort of opened our doors to all this fracking what the implications were going to be. Now we do. We have homes shaking in Topeka. When those earthquakes happen, it's very, very serious. Not to mention the extraordinary amount of water that those operations need. So I think we need to take a real serious look at that and see how we can reverse the damage.
I have a similar question more generally. So Eric Thompson from Manhattan here. Can you say something more generally about sort of energy policy? And I see we've got great, wind power here and stuff. And since the federal government doesn't really care if the climate goes to heck for our children, what are you going to do with the government?
Well, it's unfortunate, that on the federal level, they're not paying much attention to climate change because it's very difficult for individual states to make a difference. The environment crosses state boundaries, so it's really, really difficult for us to make policy that will have a significant impact on something like climate change. But in my career in the Senate, I have voted regularly for alternative energy sources and investing in those so that we could, one, have them, and two, build an industry. And look what we've done. It's been pretty phenomenal. So, and I think, energy and the technology around that is going to continue to evolve. And I think we just need to stay ahead of the curve and again, make wise investments there.
Carl Reed from Manhattan. You had two questions for you. One, you mentioned the gun issue with the domestic abusers bill, but there's another bill, and that's concealed carry reciprocity. Would you support that in its current form? And the second question has to do with the telemedicine bill that Kansans for Life are trying to bomb. And can we ever get that through without the anti-abortion poison pill in it?
Well, this is a very informed crowd, I must say. That's digging down deep. Okay, so your first question about guns. I've been accused publicly of having supported the reciprocity bill. That is not true. One, I've never had an opportunity to support it because it's on the House side. But two, when it comes over, if it comes over, the answer is absolutely not. Then we'd have no control over what's happening, and those would not be our citizens. So no, absolutely not. I'll also not support the bill that has passed the House that reduces the age for concealed carry to 18. That will be a no, even though it sort of has a little carrot in there, because it does require people who carry on campuses to get a permit. That's a good thing, though I would rather that we just go for broke and ban carry at all. And then the tele-abortion bill, is that what you're talking about? Okay. Okay, so he's really asking about telemedicine, and we're really working hard in the legislature to promote You know, I have water, it's just sort of not working, yeah, but thank you. So, Gunga Din. So anyway, we are really trying to work on telemedicine, telehealth, because we have to increase access to healthcare, particularly in our rural areas, but not exclusively in our rural areas. We use this everywhere, or should be using it everywhere. And maybe even most importantly in mental health, you know, it has been shown to be a very effective way of really making access to mental health services much broader. So, and there are some folks from the Right to Light movement who are trying to get a clause in that bill that would say that you can't use this for that, you can't use telemedicine to do abortions, which they don't do it anyway. But it also has a severability.
We were told that it's already law.
Well,
that you can't do that, so it's just kind of a red herring.
well, it's really hard to do an abortion over a TV screen, but anyway, so yeah. Yeah. So they want to do whatever they can to do that, but and the worst part of what they're trying to do is make it non-severable, so that if that clause were to be struck down as unconstitutional, which a lot of our abortion bills have been, that it would kill the whole bill. So I think there's some work going on. And is this in the House?
It passed the House.
With their stuff on it?
Yeah.
Okay, so it'll come over to us, and I hope not. I mean, you know, I can't guarantee how my colleagues are going to vote, but I think we'll work really hard to either leave it in committee or get it off. We have a pretty good public health and welfare committee where I'm the ranking. So if we get that bill, I think we'll do some work on it, and then certainly in conference committee might be where we can take care of that problem when we're negotiating with the House people. So, yeah, I mean, that's absurd.
I just want to know what changes are going to be made in DCF regarding foster care, child abuse.
Good question. She wants to know what we're doing in Department of Children and Families regarding our foster kids and child abuse. Okay. You know, we have had several incidents, many of which have been publicized. So we know that we have kids who have gone missing from our foster care system without the knowledge of the agency. You know, 45 days, more, have no idea. We clearly have had children who have been severely abused or even died in our foster care system or known to the child welfare system. So as a result of those kinds of things, last year the legislature created the Child Welfare Task Force. And what we did with this, instead of what we usually do with task force, we put a bunch of legislators on it who know nothing. We did put some legislators on it, but it's those of us who are on the Public Health and Welfare Committee, where we deal with those kinds of issues on a day in and day out basis. And then the House put their senior people on their Children and Families Committee. So we've got those 6 legislators on the committee, which will be helpful as we try to shepherd through the legislation that will come from this task force. But then I think the smart thing that we did was we asked the Supreme Court Justice to appoint CASA, the court-appointed, court-appointed special advocate, and then also a member from a Citizen Review Board. So we've got 2 of those folks on this. And then we asked the Judicial Council. The Chief Justice had to do that because those are under the auspices of the Supreme Court. But then we asked the Judicial Council to appoint others. And so we have guardian ad litems, we have social workers, we have people who provide direct services, we have foster parents, we have people who really are on the ground and know what the system is. And we set this up I'm just telling the gentleman over here, we set this task force up so that we would make a preliminary report this past January, but that we would not do our final recommendations until 2019 because we thought the current administration would do nothing but sabotage any recommendations that we had. Well, I think probably as a result of this task force, the Secretary of DCF decided to retire. Yes. And so Gina Meyer Hummel is now our new secretary for the Department of Children and Families, and she actually had been one of the appointees of the Judicial Council to be on the task force. And she was formerly the shelter director, the children's shelter director over in Lawrence. So she's been in the field, she knows what she's doing, and she cares. And so we are starting to work closely with her to make administrative changes now that can make a difference, things that don't have to wait for legislation. And then, we will continue to work through this year and present recommendations to the full legislature in January. And that's, quite honestly, it's one of the reasons I want to be governor, because I want to see that through. I want to be able to hire the people who are going to work in that system and take care of our kids in a way that they have not been taken care of for the past 7 years. I will also tell you that one of the things that we will do, and in fact, I think Gina has already done this, is you know how when a kid dies in the foster care system, we can't get any information? We're changing that, because we have not been able to find out what happened, and sort of trace it back so we could figure out what can we do differently so it doesn't happen again. That's going to change. So I'm optimistic that things will get better. It's going to take time because not only do we have awful leadership in that agency, we also under-resource them to a point where they don't have the social workers to do family preservation, to keep kids out of the system. And then on the back end, they don't have people to do the reintegration work, working with either the family, the biological family, or an adoptive family, or whatever else. We don't have enough people there to do that. And we certainly have not had enough people to do real good oversight on the contractors, the private providers. So I'm optimistic, but it won't be overnight.
I'm gonna beat Chuck. I had my hand up.
Oh, I had my back to you, I apologize.
In what ways do you think that you'll be able to break Kansas of its addiction to food sales tax, specifically?
That's another really good question and going to be a tough issue. Right now we are sort of in a wait and see on what our budget situation is going to be. We overturned the Brownback tax experiment, but not entirely. So we left ourselves probably a little bit short. And then the feds have made so many changes, and we don't understand the impact of that. So we're particularly related to school finance. We're sort of waiting to see, what happens, come April, May, June. I want to be honest and realistic with you. I would love to eliminate it tomorrow because I think it's grossly unfair. It really is probably the most regressive thing. People need to eat, and so they must buy food, and to tax them at 10% or sometimes more just seems wrong to me. I would love to eliminate it tomorrow. I don't think that's realistic. I think we're going to have to put we're going to have to build our economy so that we have more people working, more people paying taxes, so we can broaden the tax base and increase the revenues that we have. I think and that's not going to be overnight. I think if there's any opportunity to reduce it, though, once the dust settles on what we did last year and what the feds have done, then obviously that's going to be one of the highest priorities, and I think one of the first taxes to at least be reduced if we can't eliminate it, or to be reduced and eliminated over time. We've got it.
Thank you, Chuck.
Just barely.
Restart.
That's much better.
Oh, yeah, I'm gonna have to go back there.
I think the legislature would be interested in the Colorado experiment. A couple of years ago, they legalized the sale of marijuana in selected locations throughout the state. And they also, at the same time, put a significant tax on it. And it's been a huge source of income to the state, solving many, if not all, of their financial problems. But it's a very interesting thing, and I think there are now 4 or 5 other states that have done the same thing. I don't know which ones they are.
Well, there are a lot more legal Rocky Mountain highs than there used to be. So I think that's, that works for Colorado. I don't think we could ever get something like that passed now. As I was saying before when we were talking about it, we're going to have to go incrementally. Kansas tends not to take the lead on these kinds of things. So I think we just need to look for small victories and small steps forward. And perhaps get there at some point, but it will not be tomorrow.
So ideally, when you say get there at some point, you mean you would be for a recreational or medical, like ideally what's like your supreme goal in that issue?
I'll be honest with you, I don't think about it that much. It never worked. But so anyway, I think it's the only way we can go is incrementally, and I think we have to follow the lead of the people of Kansas. They will tell us when the time is right. They will elect people who will support that, and so I think that's just what we need to do. We need to keep taking advantage of particularly medical marijuana. I am supportive of medical marijuana, particularly in a controlled setting where you've got pharmacies dispensing it. I have no problem with that, and I think that might be the next thing that we can do, and I'll go there. The other thing, we're just going to have to wait until attitudes shift. We've seen that shift in a lot of other issues. When you think about my very first vote when I got into the Senate was the constitutional amendment to put gay marriage in the Constitution. Or to ban gay marriage in the Constitution. I voted no. But look where we've come, from that. So I think, people do pay attention, people do change, they evolve over time, and so I'll be right there with them.
Very recently, Republicans in the legislature have started to push for corporate chicken farming to change with regard to distances from and size, and there are some people who are opposed. Obviously, Tyson is in favor. Do you have any comments?
I do. We just actually voted on that. I think it was Senate Bill 405. Maybe we called it the chicken poop bill. So, we voted, I think we did pass it. I voted no. The real way I'd like to see that handled is local control, because there really are some counties that very much want to be able to negotiate for something like that. And I think they've got local elected officials who ought to be representing them, and they can work with them to go whichever way they want to go on that particular issue. We did have some counties, Cloud County, Montgomery County particularly, they're struggling And so they really wanted this badly. So I think I would agree to a bill that allowed the local elected officials to work with their own communities and make those decisions rather than having it mandated one way or the other from the state legislature.
Carla?
Carla Hagermeister from Potawatomi County. With a mind to the Gannon lawsuit and the Supreme Court, they're going to be making a ruling maybe this summer.
I think June 30th.
Sure.
Yeah, this summer, just before school's supposed to open again.
Should you become governor, and should the Supreme Court make a ruling that the legislature hasn't gotten there yet, how do you see responding to that conclusion by the Supreme Court? What do you see your relationship as governor? What do you see that relationship between the executive and judicial branch to look like?
Well, I think one of the things that we would restore in the administration and then as part of the culture change is a deep respect for all three branches of government. We all have a place, we have a role, and we need to be equally respected. So that would happen. And then I can tell you again, my very first session, 2005, that summer, we went into a special session, Sydney remembers, where we were dealing then with the Montoy case. And the governor called a special session and said, get her done. And we did. You know, we actually, back in that day, put several $100 million more into the public education system. And the court allowed us to do that over a 3 or 4 year period. And we funded the first 2 years of that plan. Then came the recession, and we really didn't have two nickels to rub together. It was quick and deep, that recession. But if you also remember, the feds helped us out then. They sent the ARA money, recovery money, and so that helped us fund our schools and not require deep cuts, and also some stuff in our Medicaid program. When the federal funding ceased to come, however, instead of reinvesting, we cut taxes. You know, as our economy recovered, and every other state pretty much did this, they started refunding their schools. Kansas could not, because we had so drastically cut taxes that we went, you know, our revenues went down deeper in 1 year than they did over the entire recession. I think over the entire recession, revenues dropped, I want to say 500 and some odd million, somewhere in there, maybe 6. But in 1 year, from the time that the Brownback tax cut went into effect, the first year we plummeted 700 million. And so we just did the wrong thing, and our schools have paid a huge price. I would not let that happen as governor.
Without disrespecting all of the other Democratic candidates running for governor, I've heard Carl, Jim, Josh, Mr. Graves, and everyone. But what distinguishes you in your mind as being the best candidate?
Well, clearly I am, out of the 25 candidates on both sides running, I'm the only woman. And I think the last woman governor we had did a pretty good job. So there's that. But I wouldn't expect anybody to vote for me because of my gender. I think my qualifications go well beyond that. You know, as I said in my closing remarks tonight, you know, I do have the experience. I have been there for 14 years, and I have lived through this 7 years. So I know where the problems are, and I've got solutions for those problems. I really do have the relationships to do that. I mean, you know, it's really important for a governor to work closely and have a good relationship with legislators. There will always be a little pushback. I mean, you know, we're two different branches, and we have some different priorities. But at the end of the day, you have to work together to get anything done. And you know, over the 14 years that I've been there, and I think Sydney could vouch for this, I have excellent relationships, not only with my Democrat friends, but with the moderate Republicans. And everything good that we've done before Brownback took all the mods out, we did together. You know, we formed what we call the moderate majority, where the Democrats and the moderates would gather together and we'd come up with a plurality to pass good legislation. We started to do that again. And I've established good relationships with all those moderate Republicans that have come in and the very few that remained. So I think that's something that nobody else really has, is the relationships and the respect of the colleagues to really get the job done. And I also think my temperament, you know, people find it easy to work with me, and I find it easy to work with them. I don't need credit for what gets done. I just want good ideas around the table. I tend to bring people in, you know, and I tend to bring people who know what they're talking about in. And those are the ones that I listen to, and as we're trying to move forward on an issue. So I think I bring all of that into that office, and I think the fact that, you know, I really won't need any on-the-job training is another serious qualification, because we have no time to waste, you know.
We have time for one more question. Right there in the back. I saw your hand first.
I got a question. Comment about gun control. You know, gun control does not start with you. It starts at home as parenting and not in a teacher's room with a gun.
Thank you.
Next question is on the immigration issue.
Come on up,
Everyone here.
come on up here, we can hear you better.
The next question or comment is on the immigration issue. And everyone is well aware, we did not get this immigration issue last night. We got people that have been in office back there for 40 years, and one of them is right there from Kansas. Why have we got the issue? Now they want to send them back. Let me tell you, if we send the immigration and enforce it the way Trump wants to do it, we are going to be in a world of trouble when it comes to agriculture. How many people realize the labor we get from these foreigners in the agriculture department? If you don't believe me, you go out to the stockyards. You go down to Garden City. These places are full of those immigrants. Why? I think they're great, because they're doing the jobs that you and I did not want to do when we were younger. We certainly don't want to do it now. But what is your idea on, I don't know what they want to call it, a free state for immigrants, or whatever the term is. Sanctuary state, thank you. But we need to protect the immigration. People are abiding citizens, have no criminal records. They need to stay here, and Trump doesn't need to build a damn wall anyplace.
Well, first I want to tell you another story about probably my first session. A big issue then, and which has come back this session, is stripping our college students whose parents brought them here when they were infants or 2, 3. You know, and we have allowed those kids to go to our state universities at rack rate. They don't get any scholarships, but they pay in-state tuition. And that was a huge issue when I first ran, and people were trying to repeal that bill or that law, and I voted no. Because I believe that, you know, those kids are contributing members of society. You know, they all had to have completed 3 years in a Kansas high school. They all had to be accepted into a Kansas university, and they all had to be working towards citizenship. They can't become citizens till they're 21. So but they had to be working towards it. So I thought, why would we want to eliminate that program, which is building good character, good education, good productive citizens? So I voted no, and I would do that again. I think we will be dealing with that issue again. I think it's over on the House side. Thank you, House. But the other reality with immigration is that, again, is something that has to be done on a federal level. We need a comprehensive immigration reform coming out of our Congress. We've needed it for decades, and it is time that they put their energies there, and that the president get out of the way, because actually, there have been some bipartisan attempts to deal with the immigration issue, and I think that they're heartfelt attempts, but every time they do, there's a switch at the top. So they need to keep pushing. They need to keep working. We can't set up something here, that would usurp federal law. So we need to push on our delegation. And I agree with you totally about our agricultural industry. If they did nothing more than to set up, some seasonal worker kind of situation where people could come and go seasonally, if that's what they just wanted to come up for the job, even that would help. So we need to come up with very comprehensive that might include that. But again, it has to be done at the federal level.
Do you have any concluding remarks that you want to tell us all? Or I was told that you got to bounce to Wichita. I don't know if that's true or not.
Yes, we are heading to Wichita tonight, so I probably won't linger here long, giving you closing remarks, but I do want to again thank all of you for being here, and I want to thank you particularly for your very thoughtful, very diverse questions. It's challenging to a candidate, and I think that's an important part of our democracy, so I do appreciate your being here tonight and you're asking me the tough questions.